afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining CAA today for our presentation with the Great Canadian Travel Company. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items. Firstly, please be advised that to reduce noise and feedback, everyone will be muted throughout the presentation. If you'd like to ask questions during the presentation, this can be done by clicking on the orange arrow on the control panel along the side of your screen and typing in your question under the questions field. Questions will be answered at the end of the presentation, and should we run out of time, we will follow up with an email. To maximize the enjoyment of the presentation, and you will definitely want to have full view of these videos coming up as the scenery is amazing, make sure that you are in full screen mode. And you may also have to reduce your volume on the videos as they may have been recorded at the lower volume. And finally, we are expecting the presentation to run about 30 minutes or so. So now that that is all taken care of, let me introduce myself. My name is Beth Hudson, and I am the branch manager at the CAA in St. John, New Brunswick. I've been in the travel industry for over 35 years and joined the CAA team about 13 years ago. While I've had the opportunity to visit many countries, including many regions of Canada, I have not been fortunate enough to get to Churchill, but it is definitely on my bucket list. And once you see this presentation, I'm sure you're going to agree. While we may not be safe to travel at this time, it certainly does not hurt to dream and plan for the future. So let's get on with the show. Joining me today is my colleague my colleague from PEI, Carla Murphy. Sorry, Carla.
That's okay. Thanks, Beth, and good afternoon, everyone. As she's already stated, my name is Carla Murphy, and I work out of the CAA branch here in Charlottetown, PEI. I've also been in the travel industry for 30 plus years, and as the saying goes, apparently time does fly when you love what you do. And I truly enjoy this industry tremendous. And in that note, I'd like to introduce you to Shauna Cook. She will take us on a wonderful journey through the Great Canadian Travel Group. Over to you, Shauna.
Thanks, Carla. Hi, I'm Shauna. I am a top of the world specialist here at Great Canadian Travel. We are located in Winnipeg. We do have two offices. I'm in the Winnipeg office. We have an Edmonton office as well. I've been with the company for about 7.5 years. I specialize in Churchill, Greenland, Iceland, Faroe Islands, Scandinavia, Russia, and then I do expedition cruising as well, including Antarctica. Basically, if it's cold, I like to be there. I do love a good beach vacation, don't get me wrong, but I just love exploring interesting places. This particular picture actually was taken in Hammerfest, Norway, which was actually one of the polar bear capitals of Europe. So I didn't see any bears on this trip, but that was just a fun fact I realized after putting this together. I'm going to turn off my camera now so you get the full view of my screen. So now, who are we? So we are the Great Canadian Travel Group. As I mentioned, we do love to travel to unique and underexplored areas. We've been around since the early 80s, and we were one of the first companies to operate polar bear trips into Churchill. We are passionate about the North, but especially Canada's North because it is our very own backyard. So as we know, COVID-19 has kind of taken over things for the last year, over a year now, I guess. And for Churchill, currently travel is closed to Churchill except for non-essential visitors, medical visits, family visits, etc. This is for all Canadians, including those of us who live in southern Manitoba. This is to protect the people that live up north of the 53rd parallel because medical services up there can be scarce. Typically, communities will have a small nursing station, maybe an on-resident doctor, but sometimes not. So it's to protect people that live up there. In 2020, we were able to have a modified beluga and bear seasons. This just means that the only people who were able to travel north to Churchill were people who lived in Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, and British Columbia. No one else was able to visit up there. We're hoping for expanded version of that for the 2021 season, and we are planning for that. General rules that came into place last year, and they are still in place and will continue through until necessary for COVID-19. Smaller group sizes. So this allows for physical distancing. Tours are operating at 50% capacity or less. All vehicles and touch points are sanitized multiple times throughout the day. Per provincial regulations, face coverings are required on all tours and when in any public building. It's also recommended to wear your face covering while you're walking outside. It's not mandatory, but it is recommended. Hand sanitizer is readily available in most tour vehicles and all public buildings. Breakfast services in hotels has been suspended. However, there is always at least one restaurant open at any given time for all meals that you would require up there. Daily housekeeping is not provided in the hotels unless requested. So if you need extra towels, if you really want your sheets changed, you can request it. That's no problem. But the rooms are thoroughly cleaned between registered guests. If the meals are included on your day tour, they'll be pre-packaged individually. So a pre-wrapped sandwich, granola bar, bottled water, etc. This avoids as much cross-contamination as possible. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about Winnipeg. I would just like to acknowledge that Winnipeg is located on Treaty 1 land, the original land of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Ojibwe, Dakota, and Dene peoples. It is the homeland of the Métis Nation. So most Churchill programs do start and end in Winnipeg. So a lot of people do add on at least an extra day to explore. Winnipeg is located at the confluence of the Red and the Assiniboine rivers, and is near the longitudinal center of North America, sorry. So you'll see in the bottom right photo, you can actually see the two rivers coming together, the lighter river on the bottom and the darker river on top. They literally meet at the forks, that's that area there. And the bottom left is the actual Center of Canada Monument, which is located about 15 minutes outside of Winnipeg on the Trans-Canada Highway headed towards Ontario. So just a few attractions I'll mention. Winnipeg has lots of things to see, but that's not really why we're here today, so I'll just mention a few. I did mention the Forks. This is the meeting place in central Winnipeg, downtown, very well located. The Canadian Museum for Human Rights, which you'll see in the bottom row of photos in the middle. It's the building in the background. It looks kind of like a dove. This is the only national museum that's located outside of the nation's capital. We have the Assiniboine Park Zoo and Journey to Churchill. Those are the top two photos. You'll see the entrance to Journey to Churchill. This is a place where you're guaranteed to see a polar bear. You will always see a bear here. And then the right photo at the top is there's a really cool plexiglass tunnel that you can walk through and the bears do swim over top of you. And also the Winnipeg Art Gallery and the brand new Kalmajuk Inuit Art Gallery that just opened on Monday actually for their soft opening. And they're continuing their soft opening through this week. So it's a really cool thing to check out when you're in the city. So now on to Churchill. So Churchill has 3 distinct visitor seasons. Visiting outside of these seasons can be quite challenging as the tours just don't operate. The operators typically will fly back south to Winnipeg where they'll live for the rest of the year. There's just not demand for tours outside of that season. So the first season I'm going to talk about is beluga whale season. So this starts in early July. It can be a little bit earlier into late June. It depends on the ice melt on the bay through to late August. So during this season, you're almost guaranteed to see beluga whales. I mean, 99.9%. There's always whales around. Every summer, around 3,000 of them come into the Churchill River Basin, and approximately 60,000 come into Hudson Bay Area alone. Polar bears are also seen this time of year, but it's not as common. They want to be as cool as possible, so you'll see them laying low in the rocks, in the river if they can, just trying to conserve their energy because it's so warm for them. The best way to see them in the summertime, though, is from a beluga boat tour. So bear season is the season, the busiest season, the most exciting season. This technically starts late September through mid-November. However, the best opportunities to see bears is around mid-October through mid-November, with the last week of October and the first week of November being that really kind of sweet spot, best chances to see bears. They are hungry, so they're out, they're waiting for Hudson Bay to freeze over. Once it's frozen, they're gone. They start hunting, and bear season is done. And then the third season is actually a relatively new season. It's only been an actual tour operation season for a couple of years, Northern Lights season. So this is February, March. So Northern Lights can be seen, I mean, anytime the sky is dark if the conditions are right. There are better times to see it based on weather. So, late August and early September can offer some active skies with the nice kind of fall early evenings, but the best time to see it is February and March when the weather tends to be a bit more clear. So getting to Churchill, this can be challenging. It can be really exciting as well. There are only 2 ways that visitors can reach Churchill. It's 1,000 kilometers due north, but if you're taking the train, it is actually 1,700 kilometers of track, because you'll see on my map here, it shows the way the plane flies. However, the train actually goes up a bit to the west and then comes back east towards Churchill. So it does add quite a bit of time. The flight is with Calm Air. It is between 2 and 2.5 hours, depending on the aircraft that's being used. And Via Rail from Winnipeg takes 48 hours one way, so it's a very long go. It can be taken from Thompson. This is typical for summer trips. From Thompson, it takes between 18 and 20 hours. So still a long go, but it definitely shaves off a lot of the time. So now into Churchill. So we'd like to acknowledge that Churchill is located on Treaty 5 land, the original land of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Ojibwe, Dakota, and Dene peoples. It is the homeland of the Métis Nation. So just a really brief history of Churchill. It's located on the shores of Hudson Bay. The town of Churchill and the surrounding area are steeped in history as old as Canada. Archaeology in the area shows evidence of human presence dating back 4,000 years to pre-Dorset and Dorset people. So I have a few interesting and unique facts about Churchill. The first one does sound really scary, but it is important for me to mention. Exploring the streets of Churchill, exploring the streets of the town site is okay and it is encouraged. But as soon as you're leaving the immediate town site area, you must be in the presence of someone who is firearm trained and carrying a rifle. This is normally Parks Canada staff. However, if you're on a tour, your tour guide will also either provide that person or be that person. This is strictly for your safety. Bears are wandering. They're wild animals up there. You're in the middle of bear country, so it's for your safety. A fun fact, at Halloween, a helicopter goes up at 3 o'clock in the afternoon to look for bears. Locals, including civilians, RCMP, Army Reserve, firefighters, paramedics, they set up to patrol the streets of the town to allow the kids to trick or treat. I was there for Halloween about 4 years ago, and it's actually a really cool thing to be there for. Everyone's blocked off all the streets. The kids can go down one of the streets, and they can just trick or treat freely. So it is during the height of bear season, right in smack in the middle. And one rule is you're not allowed to dress up as anything white, especially a ghost or a polar bear. As locals do leave their car doors and their houses unlocked, especially during bear season, people do think this is a law. It's not actually a legal law. It's just kind of an unwritten rule of Churchill. It's just in case someone needs to make a quick escape from a scary situation. It has happened, and it does happen, and the locals know that, so they just keep everything unlocked to help their neighbors. So these are just a few of the Churchill attractions. I'll just mention a few of them quickly. We've got the Prince of Wales Fort, which you'll see in the top left corner. It was built 250 years ago on the windswept coast of Hudson Bay at the mouth of the Churchill River. This used to be a bustling hub for fur traders and was later turned into a stone fortification where peace was threatened when peace was threatened between England and France. There was a strong desire to control Hudson Bay's resources, and the Prince of Wales Fort had the most advantageous position for defense. Also, the oldest Masonic symbol in Manitoba can be found here. This is also part of the Sloop Cove hike, which actually the top left photo does depict the Sloop Cove portion of the fort. It's a 4-kilometer hike from Sloop Cove to the fort on the west side of the river. The real treasure here is the artistic scrawling, which you can just about make out. It says F. Hearn, July 1767. This is of the Hudson Bay Company's men in the 18th century. They were depicting some graffiti on the oldest bedrock on Earth. You'll also see a plane crash there, kind of sitting on top of some snow. This is Miss Piggy. This is the wreck of a Curtiss C-46 Commando twin-prop cargo aircraft that was owned and operated by Lamb Airways. It crashed at 9:30 in the morning on November 13, 1979, as it attempted to return to Churchill after reporting engine troubles on takeoff. The plane landed roughly. The crew did survive and suffered only minor injuries. All the cargo was offloaded, and the plane was left. This is a really fun playground for bears to hang around. So most of town tours, you will visit this area, but your guide will clear the plane before anyone's able to approach it. You will see a ship kind of in the bottom right corner. This is the MV Ithaca. She was an 80-meter long ship, and she sits just outside of Bird Cove. It's about 20 kilometers east of Churchill. You can see her from pretty much anywhere in the Churchill town site. She sits high and dry when the tide is low, but she's completely surrounded by water when the tide is high. She was a British-flagged steamship built in 1922 in Three Rivers, Quebec. She left the port of Churchill on September 14, 1960, bound for Rankin Inlet, Nunavut to the north, with a cargo of electrical generators and plywood. Her rudder broke in an 80-mile-an-hour gale, and she ran aground. So you can hike out here. I think you can see a hiker there in the bottom kind of right corner. Again, you do need to use our Parks Canada staff for this, as in the summertime, bears do like to play in this area as well. There's also the Sanitak Museum, which is in the top right corner. It's a museum that has a collection of Inuit carvings and artifacts that are among the finest and oldest in the world, dating from pre-Dorset through Dorset, Thule, and modern Inuit time. So you'll see the bottom left corner is a building with a beautiful bear mural, and right next to that is a helicopter with a bear in a net. So this is the polar bear holding facility, and just a kind of a side note, a great show to get some information on this right now is airing on CBC. It's called Arctic Vets. They do treat some animals here in Winnipeg at the Assiniboine Park Zoo and in Churchill. So they really explain this process really well if you're interested in checking that out. So this facility is located just outside of town. Bears are tagged, so they're tracked daily just to make sure they're not getting too close to town. And if they are humanely trapped and moved to the polar bear holding facility. Here they're checked out to make sure they're healthy. They generally stay for a few days, but the idea isn't for them to get comfortable. So the cells are only about 12 by 16 feet. The bears are given water but no food. They are checked on daily, but all human interactions are kept to a minimum because they can't have the bears getting used to the smell of humans. Once possible, a bear lift is organized. The bear is sedated and moved quickly outside where it's laid on top of a net. The net is picked up by a helicopter and the bear is flown out of the community, typically around 70 kilometers outside the town or more. A scan of the area is done to ensure that there is no other bears or predators in the area, so the relocated bear can come out of sedation and continue enjoying his bear life. So now we're going to talk about the summer season in Churchill. So the stars of the show in the summer are the beluga whales. So you can kayak with them, you can paddleboard with them, you can do a Zodiac boat tour. There is also the Churchill Town and Area tour that I mentioned, which is a land-based tour that will take you out to see some of the attractions. A Tundra Buggy tour. So the Tundra Buggy is the vehicle in the bottom photo. This is a unique vehicle. It does have a washroom on board, and you'll see it also does have a viewing platform at the back. Windows can come down as well. It's a really cool vehicle. The tires allow it to go through a lot of different terrain. And then dog carting is something unique for people to do too. It's exactly like dog sledding, but the sleds have their skis replaced with wheels in the summertime. So I am just going to show you a quick video now. This is going to help you get to experience some of the summer touring. All right, so I hope that made you excited. We'll go on to the next slide here. They do have some photos. So these are just a few more photos of the summer touring. So the top three, of course, are paddleboarding, but you will have a similar experience with kayaking. The belugas do come that close. They're really curious, fun animals. They'll push the paddleboards, they'll push the kayaks just to kind of excite you, and they get excited. It's really fun. The bottom two left bears, that's how you're going to see the bears pretty much in the summertime. They want to stay cool. They're in the water or right next to it on the kelp beds trying to dig up some snacks. And then our friendly little beluga there in the bottom right. So now we're on to polar bear season. These guys are the star of the show in Churchill. They're the most popular residents and who pretty much everyone goes to see. So Churchill is one of the best and most successful places in the world to see polar bears. Male bears can grow to be more than 1,300 pounds and stand 10 feet tall. Despite this huge size, they can move very quickly. They have a highly acute sense of smell. They're skilled hunters and can pick up a scent from over 30 kilometers away. They detect seals from under 3 feet of snow and ice. Studies indicate that there are between 900 and 1,000 polar bears in the western Hudson Bay population. So there are a few different ways to see bears during bear season. The two most popular I'll talk about. So there's a day tour. This is typical for Canadian clients and people who maybe just want to spend a weekend doing a little trip getaway. The day tour is strategically planned. There's two, sometimes three a year. They're planned to be during the best time for bear season. You leave Winnipeg at 7 o'clock in the morning by flight. You're arriving into Churchill by 9:30. Breakfast is served to you on the plane. Once you arrive in Churchill, you're transferred directly to the Tundra Buggy launch site to board your all-day Tundra Buggy tour. Lunch is included for you on the Tundra Buggy as well. Then once the late afternoon sun starts to disappear, you head back to the launch to board your transfer into town. You have a little bit of time for some shopping, and then you have dinner included in town before transferring back to the airport and your flight back south. You're back in Winnipeg by 10 o'clock. So here are a few other animals you could see in the wintertime. It's pretty common to see snowy owl, the ptarmigan in the bottom left, and Arctic fox is quite common to see as well, and of course the famous polar bears there. The other option, and the most popular option, is a multi-day tour. This allows you the best chances, the most chances you can to see bears. All of these packages do include pre- and post-night stays in Winnipeg. In Churchill, the options range from 2 to 4 nights there. Most people stay in moderate hotels in the town. There are only 6 hotels, and they're all very, very moderate. Basic 2.5 to 3-star accommodations, but they're clean, they're warm, they're comfortable, they're all that you need. You're out of your hotel basically all day seeing the bears anyway. Some people do choose to stay in the Tundra Buggy Lodge, which is a really unique accommodation. I'll talk about that a bit more later. When traveling on a multi-day program, you're led by an experienced tour leader all the time. And in Churchill, you're joined by wildlife experts to help spot wildlife and teach you about the area. You'll also enjoy a town and area tour, a visit to the Polar Bears International House, a visit to the Parks Canada Visitor Center, the Sanitac Museum, and you'll also get an exhilarating dog sled adventure. It's mostly about the bears, though, so you will have at least 2 full days on the tundra. So the top left, again, is the Tundra Buggy. This is showing you just how close the bears can get. You'll see some people do have their arms out of the windows. You are allowed to rest your arm on the window, but don't dangle your hand because they're quite tall, so they can jump up that side. Top right, you'll see in the back there's a gentleman named Dave Daly. He is a really famous dog sledder and musher. He has competed in the Iditarod. He has his very own Mile, which is offered in Churchill, and that's what you'll get to do. And the bottom, of course, a sleepy polar bear. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Northern Light season, but before I do that, I'm going to show you one video on Churchill. All right, does that get anyone else excited to go out for the winter time? Just seeing the bears up there in the winter is so interesting. So Northern Light season, as I mentioned, this is pretty new for tourists. It's only been around for a couple of years. There are very limited opportunities, only a couple of departures a year. It's typically a 5 or a 6-day escorted program, again, including a Churchill town and area tour, a visit to the Sanitac Museum, and an evening forest excursion, a visit to the Polar Bear International House, an interpretive snowshoe trek, dog sledding, visit to Parks Canada Centre, and this is going to be a sure highlight. We're going to see a video on this in just a minute, is the Dan's Diner culinary experience. Dinner and food like you've never experienced. It's amazing. Plus, of course, lots of Northern Lights viewing opportunities. So we have the Northern Lights on the left, of course, a little bit of winter dog sledding, and then on the right is Dan's Diner dining experience. So I'm going to show you a couple videos again right now for Northern Lights viewing season. Hopefully this gets you excited for that.
So this is more than just a dinner. This is an experience for adventure seekers and food lovers. You get a little bit of both, a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B.
You get to experience a fantastically cooked meal. Let's see if I can bump that up. The best meal you could ever eat in your life.
You're outside in the middle of nowhere, checking out the aurora while you're eating some amazing food that's local to the province and the country. I mean, what else can you ask for at that point?
Keeping it Manitoban was very important to us because we're both from Manitoba. We want to highlight ingredients that we both grew up eating.
You know, beets, wheat berries, you know, rutabaga squash, turnips, grains, wild rices, pickerel fish, things that are, you know, very Manitoba.
So we wanted to do a couple courses to start where it was individual, but then towards the end have a family style meal, really sparking the conversation and having it as an inclusive experience.
Yeah, it's kind of like having friends over for dinner. You know, you don't want to make anything too formal. You want people to enjoy while they're there.
We're creating memories for people, and there's something very rewarding about that.
They may not remember our names or our faces or even the food that they ate, but it's going to be part of that memory. They're going to know that they had this amazing meal with amazing people in this amazing setting, and it's going to be a memory they hopefully will never forget.
So how delicious does that food look? It's incredible. So now we're going to talk about, this is one of the coolest experiences and something you can't really experience anywhere else, the Tundra Buggy Lodge. So you'll see in the bottom left and the bottom right corners, kind of the layout of the lodge. Basically, it is several Tundra Buggy vehicles that have been assembled together to make a lodge. So it's a very unique immersive experience. So you can basically fall asleep and wake up next to the bears. They're right outside the window. And on clear nights, you can see the northern lights as well because there are outdoor viewing platforms. So the lodge consists of 2 accommodation units that can sleep up to 40 guests. There are 20 upper and 20 lower sleeping berths. There's a lounge, a dining hall, and staff quarters. So it is important to note that this is not private facilities. There are shared washroom facilities. Each 20-person accommodation unit has 3 bathrooms with 2 showers. So you need to keep that in mind, but the experience is just unreal. Just waking up next to the bears, going to sleep next to the bears. From the time you board the Tundra Buggy Lodge on your day 1, your feet do not touch the ground until you depart on day 3, 4, or 5, however long you're staying for. You're always consistently on a vehicle, so you are safe. It's just a really unique experience out there. So the lodge does have exterior lights so you can see the bears after the sun goes down. Each berth has its own window, a reading light, as well as 110-volt electrical outlets. You do have a twin-size mattress. There are sound dampening curtains, which you'll see in the video I'm going to show you coming up. So there is privacy. There is individual temperature control as well. Bedding, towels, and earplugs are provided. So it is a really cool, unique experience, one of those once-in-a-lifetime experiences. I'm going to show you 2 videos to show kind of exactly what you're in for on this.
Radio check and leaving launch.
Reading 555, Buggy 5. Have a great day out there.
Okay, so how exciting is that? It's just such a unique way to see the bears. They're kind of always wandering around, so this saves you some time from having to go back and forth between the Churchill town site. It is, of course, a bit of a more expensive option, but it's definitely bucket list worthy. So that's all from me. Thank you so much. We hope to see you in Churchill soon.
Oh my goodness, Shauna, that was phenomenal. Thank you so much. Tundra Buggy Lodge is definitely on my bucket list. Thank you.
Right?
Let's get this COVID thing in the past, and Beth, let's go.
Absolutely. Let's sign you up.
I'm there. I'm definitely there.
Excellent. I don't know if any questions have come in during the presentation. In the meantime, I just wanted to advise our attendees this afternoon, there are other presentations taking part through until 4 o'clock. So we do have Ireland with Brendan Tours at 1, followed by Globus doing Iceland at 2, Italy with Trafalgar Tours at 3, and Australia and New Zealand at 4 o'clock with Go-Way. If you do need the link to RSVP, just send us a note and we can send that off to you. I don't see any questions. Okay, so on that note, in closing, I'd sincerely like to thank you all for joining us this afternoon. Shauna, thank you for that terrific presentation. And
thank you for having me.
And introducing us to the Great Canadian Travel Group. Okay, and let's get back to the wonderful world of travel, everyone.
Yes, let's. Stay safe, everyone. Thank you.
All Enjoy the
Just a
rest of your day.
reminder, I think that the Great Canadian Travel Company is providing a door prize. Yes?
We are, yes.
Yes. So just what we're going to do is we're going to take a list of the attendees and do a draw, and we'll notify the winner by by email. So I know it's a very cute little prize. I've seen it. Some lucky winner will be very happy.
All right.
All right. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
and thanks for joining us,
Take
everyone.
care.